A long, long time ago, in a magical land called Palestine, there lived three sisters, and they were spinners. And they had nothing but their spinning. Every day, one of the sisters stayed up the entire night spinning, 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 while the other two sisters slept. And in the morning, they took that which her sister had spun and carried it off to the souk. And one evening, the town crier announced that the king wanted everyone to turn their lanterns off that night. What were the girls to do? They had nothing but their spinning. And the eldest sister looked up at the sky and she said, "Oh Lord, may the king be passing by, and may he hear me, and may he marry me to his baker, so that I may always have my fill of bread." And the second sister said, "Oh Lord, may the king be passing by, and may he hear me, and may he marry me to his cook, so that I may always have my fill of food." And the youngest sister, she too looked up and she said, "Oh Lord, may the king be passing by, and may he hear me, and may he marry me to his son, and may we have 3 children, 2 boys and a little girl. The boys we will name Aladdin and Bahadin, and the girl we will name Shamsa. And when Shamsa smiles, the sun will shine. And when Shamsa cries, it will rain. It will pour." And so it happened that the king was passing by, and he heard the girls and he said, "Make it happen." And he married the eldest one to the baker, the middle one to the cook, and the youngest one to his own son. Now, seeing that they were married to the baker and the cook, while their younger sister was married to the king's son, the 2 older sisters grew jealous. Meanwhile, their younger sister was pregnant, and as her belly grew, the 2 elder sisters walked up to the midwife with a puppy in one hand and golden coins in the other. "When our sister gives birth, place this puppy behind her legs and hand over the baby to us. Here are some golden coins." What did the daughter-in-law of the king's household give birth to? What did the daughter-in-law of the king's household give birth to? What did she give birth to? She gave birth to a puppy. But the king loved that puppy, and he raised it up as if it was a human. Meanwhile, the 2 elder sisters took baby Aladdin and placed him inside of the box. And they carried him inside of the river. And the box floated and floated and floated. And on the other side of the river lived an elderly couple who never could have children of their own, but they never lamented, for they had an orchard filled with fruit trees. And so, even without any children, their hearts were always filled with love and birth. And that day, as the elderly couple were picking lemons and oranges off of their trees, they noticed the box floating inside of the river. The old man picked up the box, opened it up, and there was Aladdin. "Old woman, how about we keep this child and raise him as our own? He may come of use to us one day." And they kept him. Meanwhile, the daughter-in-law of the king's household was pregnant once again. And once again, the two elder sisters approached the midwife, this time with a kitten in one hand and golden coins in the other. What did the daughter-in-law of the king's household give birth to? What did the daughter-in-law of the king's household give birth to? What did she give birth to? She gave birth to a kitten. But the king loved that kitten, and he was often found with the puppy on one knee and the kitten on the other, bouncing them up and down and up and down and up and down. And Bahadin made it to the other side of the river. And the same elderly couple found him. They opened up the box, and of course they kept him. And the youngest sister was pregnant once again. And once again, the two elder sisters approached the midwife, this time with a stone in one hand and golden coins in the other. What did the daughter-in-law of the king's household give birth to? What did the daughter-in-law of the king's household give birth to? What did she give birth to? She gave birth to a stone. And the king banished the youngest sister right out of the kingdom. Meanwhile, their daughter, Shamsa, floated in that river. And the same elderly couple found a box. They opened it up, and Shamsa smiled, and the sun shone, and of course they kept her. And Aladdin and Bahadin grew to be handsome young men. And Shamsa grew to be exactly as her mother wished her to be. When she smiled, the sun shone. And when she cried, it rained, it poured. And the elderly couple, they passed away, leaving all of their belongings, the orchard, and everything to the three children whom they loved. What are we going to do here all alone? And they sold the orchard, and they crossed the river to the king's town. And not knowing that the king was their father, they built themselves a palace next to the king's palace that was almost identical to that of the king's, except smaller. And they began to roam the souk. And one day, as they were in the souk, the two ants noticed them. And they recognized them as the three babies that they had thrown inside of the river. They approached an old crone, and they gave her some golden coins. The next morning, as Shamsa sat at the windowsill, smiling at the sunny day, that same crone was walking by, calling her wares, selling trinkets. And Shamsa began to cry. And one of her tears dropped upon the henna, making it as red as blood. Now, why did you do that? I'm sorry, grandmother. It's just that I wanted to buy something, but my brothers are out hunting and I didn't have any money, and so I began to cry. But look, it's raining now. Won't you come inside for shelter? And the old crone walked in, and she began to look at every corner of that palace. My dear, your palace is almost perfect. But it's still missing one thing. What is it missing? It's missing little Nightingale the Crier. Where can I find that bird? Oh, your brothers can find that bird for you. Allah has blessed you with two such brothers, hasn't he? And with that, the crone left the palace, and Shamsa began to weep. And as she wept, it began to thunder, and it began to storm. And the brothers jumped upon the horse, and they rode the horse back into the palace. Shamsa, Shamsa, what's the matter? Nothing. It's just that an old grandmother was just here, and she said that our palace was almost perfect. What is it missing, Shamsa? It's missing little Nightingale, the crier. And I want that bird. Where can we find that bird? I don't know, but I want him. Shamsa, Shamsa, weep no more, for we, your brothers, are going to find you that bird. And Aladdin mounted upon his horse, and just before he left, Shamsa handed him a bag of provisions, and he took his ring off of his finger, and he placed it upon the ring of Bahadin. If this ring tightens, come and find me. It means that I am in trouble. And Aladdin rode that horse for 7 days and 7 nights until he reached a hole. Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum salam, my brother. If your salam had not come before your greeting, I would have torn your flesh and munched on your bones. How may I help you, my brother? I'm looking for a little Nightingale, the crier. I don't know of such a bird, but I have a brother who's older than me by a month, but wiser by a lifetime. He will surely know where that bird is. He lives in the mountain right across of mine. And Aladdin rode that horse down the mountain and up again until he faced the second hole. Assalamu alaikum. Malaikum salam, my brother. If your salam had not come before your greeting, I would have torn your flesh and munched on your bones. How may I help you, my brother? I'm looking for little Nightingale, the crier. I do not know of such a bird, nor does any other ghoul. Only a hula can help you with that. I have a sister. She lives in the bottom of that mountain over there. You will find her grinding something. If she's grinding sugar, stay away. But if she's grinding salt, approach her, suck on both of her breasts, and she will answer any question that you may have. And Aladdin rode that horse through the mountains until he reached the mountains where no plant dares to grow and no animal dares to roam. And on the very bottom of that mountain sat the hula. Her hair was disheveled. Her eyes were red. Her breasts were long and tubular and flung to the back as not to get in the way of her grinding. She was grinding salt. Aladdin approached the hole from the back. He sucked upon her right breast. Who is it that sucks on my right breast? He's now dearer to me than my son Ismail. He walked over and he sucked on her left breast. Who is it that sucks on my left breast? He is now dearer to me than my son Abdul Razak. He walked over and he looked inside of the hula's red eyes. Welcome to Allah's safekeeping, Aladdin. How may I help you? I'm looking for little Nightingale, the crier. Ah, little Nightingale the Crier. Little Nightingale the Crier lives on the top of the highest mountain. There is a tree, and upon the tree hangs a golden cage. Around the cage flies little Nightingale the Crier. He will call out to you 3 times. Do not answer the bird. But you can't get there on your own. My sons will have to take you there. She blew on him, turned him inside of a pin, and placed him inside of her disheveled hair. And through the wind and the storm they came. There were 40 of them, and the youngest one was lame. And before they even got back to their mother, they called out, "Mother, we smell human flesh." And no, there's no such thing of a kind here, and no such thing of a kind. Mother, we smell. All right, but he had sucked on my breast just like you did, and now he's my son just like you, and you must promise him safety. He's welcome in Allah's safekeeping, mother. She blew on him, turned him back into Aladdin. He's looking for little Nightingale the Crier. Which one of you can take him there? And the eldest one said, "I will get him there in 10 days. And the middle one said, "I will get him there in 5 days. And the third one said, "I will get him there in 3 hours. And the youngest one, the lame one, said, "I can get him there in a blink of an eye." And so they went. And Aladdin hid behind the tree. I'm little Nightingale the Crier. Who dare say, here I am, here I am. Ha! It's you. And he blew on him, turned him into a stone, and rolled him down that mountain. And Bahadin's ring began to tighten upon his finger. Now, good people of the audience, what do you think that the middle brother did? You must know that story. Yes, he did exactly that. He did exactly as his first brother did, except I'm little Nightingale the Crier. Who dare say, here I am? Bahadin said nothing at all. I'm little Nightingale the Crier. Who dare say, here I am? Ha! I guess he wasn't that different after all. It's you. He blew on him, turned him into a stone, and rolled him down that mountain. Now, who was left? That's right, the sister, Shamsa. Her ring began to tighten around her finger. She didn't even take a bag of provisions. She jumped upon that horse, and she rode that horse past the first hole. If your greeting had not come, salam had not come before your greeting, past the second hole, I would have torn your flesh and munched on your bones. And she was looking inside of the hula's red eyes. Shamsa, your brothers are in trouble, and only you could save them. But Shamsa, do not answer that bird. If you answer that bird, you will lose. But if you don't answer that bird, you will free your brothers and many other people. And Shamsa mounted upon that horse, and she looked deep inside of the hula's red eyes. Shamsa, go free your brothers. And Shamsa rode that horse up, up, up the tallest mountain. But Shamsa, unlike her brothers, she did not hide behind that tree. She climbed inside of the branches of that tree, and she looked right inside of that cage. I'm little Nightingale the Crier. Who dare say, here I am? Shamsa said nothing at all. I'm little Nightingale the Crier. Who dare say, here I am? Nothing at all. And that bird continued repeating itself over and over and over again until it nearly exploded. And then it flew inside of the cage, and Shamsa closed the door of the cage, and she took the cage right down from the tree. Please let me go. Please let me go. If you let me free, I will sing the sweetest songs to you. Please set me free. I will not set you free, but you will tell me how to free my brothers. Take a handful of sand. Go to those 2 stones that are in the bottom of the mountain and place the sand there. And she took a handful of sand and she poured it upon the first stone. And Aladdin came back to life. And then she poured the sand upon the second stone. And Bahadin came back to life. But Shamsa, our Shamsa, did not stop there. She poured sand upon every stone upon that mountain, and a nation of people came back to life. And they all went back to their homes. And Shamsa mounted her horse. And she rode that horse down, down, down that mountain with her 2 brothers riding 6 feet behind her. And then they rode that horse to that mountain where no animal dares to grow and no plant dares to grow. And in the bottom of their mountain, they said goodbye to their hula. And then they rode that horse up, 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 up the mountain back to their palace. And when they returned, Shamsa spent most of her time inside of the palace getting to know little Nightingale the Crier. And the boys, well, they did as men often do. They spent all their time in the cafes, smoking nargila and telling stories of their adventures. Well, the king heard about their stories, and he rushed over to the palace, and upon hearing their stories, he was so fond of the boys. Well, why don't you come to our palace for dinner tomorrow and meet Shamsa and little Nightingale? And the king agreed. And when he arrived, Shamsa brought a large tray full of fruits. And little Nightingale whispered inside of her ear, place some carrots inside with the fruits. And she did. Little Nightingale, come have some carrots with us. I'm Little Nightingale the Crier, and I do not eat carrots. You stupid people of the city, you sons of donkeys and camels. Have you ever heard of a woman inside of a king's household giving birth to a puppy, a kitten, and a stone? Whatever do you mean? I mean, your wife, the queen, did not give birth to a puppy, a kitten, and a stone. Your children, Aladdin, Bahadin, and Shamsa, are standing here in front of you. And the king immediately called the queen back into the palace. Mute. I'm not sure at what point I went muted. Can somebody tell me? Can somebody tell me at what point I went muted?
Yes, you went just towards the end and the king brought the queen back to the palace.
And brought the king back to the palace, and the town crier announced that if anybody has wood to spare, to bring them into the royal fire. And the midwife and the two elder sisters were thrown inside of the fire, and their ashes were splattered into the air. And the bird, it has flown. The stories have been told. And now we will take a 5-minute break. But while I was telling this story, the sun went down and the moon went up, which means that the holy month of Ramadan has just ended and Eid has just begun. If there are any Muslims in the audience, Eid Mubarak.